Welcome to our podcast, and we've got Krystina Hill back, and we have convinced her husband, Derek, to come join us. So welcome.
Yes, thank you.
To the podcast. Glad to have you. Thanks for making time for us. And so we introduced Krystina last week, for those who didn't know who Krystina was. So Derek, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? And
My name is Derek Hill. I'm 39 years old. No, I'm just joking. I am 39. I've been married to Krystina for 13 years.
Almost 14.
We're
We're 13 and a half.
We're making it. We've been together 14 years at least, right?
I'm glad you're making it. That's good.
Yeah. I'm from the Springfield, Missouri area, down in the southwest corner of Missouri.
Born and raised.
Born and raised there. Didn't venture very far from there until I met Krystina. Just it's my stomping grounds. I'm very, very familiar and comfortable with that area. I'm a police officer. I've been a police officer for a little over 17 years now. Done a whole bunch of cool stuff as a police officer. You know, started out patrol, became a dog handler. I was a canine handler for 8.5 years, something like that. Promoted out of that to sergeant, ran several different units and divisions as a sergeant, not divisions, but units, and then promoted from there to a command staff position and ran some divisions that way. Now I'm the deputy chief. So.
Did you always want to be a police officer growing up?
No, I actually want to be a fireman. Serious.
Oh my gosh, that's like. Don't let anybody know that. That's
like I don't tell a lot of people that. And I went to EMT school, which is a prerequisite in Missouri to get your firefighter 1 and 2 done. But
okay.
I went to EMT school, did that. Was in the process of becoming a firefighter, and my brother has always wanted to be a police officer. He is a police officer now. He's been a police officer for about 15 years, and he said, come do a ride-along. You'll like it. It's kind of neat. It's kind of fun. He was a cadet at the time, and so I was like, okay, cool. So I went and did a ride-along, and I liked it way better.
Yeah.
The firefighter thing's pretty alluring because you get to sleep on the job,
Right.
play video games, which I don't care about video games,
Right.
but I mean, they had a lot of cool things going for them, but I really like the adrenaline side of policing. So, and you know, not to be cliche, you do actually get to help people in the sense of solving problems, and I like solving problems. I don't necessarily like dealing with the problems that I deal with, but
Right.
solving problems is satisfying on some level, so
Right.
I do enjoy that.
So all brothers?
I have
No
two
sisters?
brothers, a little brother and a big brother. One's a cop, one's not.
So you're in the middle.
And right in the middle.
And your parents still live up there in the Springfield area?
They do. They've been married for 43 years, I think. 43. Yeah, that was my brother. 41. He's 43 years. They've been married for 43 years, and
That's great.
living life up there. I mean, my dad runs 2 or 3 radio stations up there, Christian radio stations, news talk radio stations, and I think my mom works for him, and they just do life. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you kind of a side question about your parents and growing up in their family. So what's the top thing you took from your parents that you've kind of implemented in your own family? Maybe it was modeled, maybe they told you.
You know, my mom's always been extremely big about communication. You know, you sit down at the dinner table and it's like, tell me about your day. And as a kid,
I bet you loved
it was horrible. It was like, man, it was fine. It was school. What did you expect? I mean, we learned stuff, and and it annoyed me. But now I find myself, you know, we have a very specific dinner time at our house. Not a time, but when it's time for dinner, the TV gets turned off. We have dinner at the table. We sit down. When the girls are done, they ask to be excused because, you know, they don't eat their entire food. So, but, you know, we talk about the day. We talk about things that happen, and you know, at first they were extremely reluctant to be like, yeah, I had school today. Okay, cool. What'd you learn? I don't know.
Right.
Well, okay. But now, you know, they actually turn the table on me a little bit, and they start asking me about my day. And my day is, you know, hard for me to explain to them sometimes, but
Sure.
But they do a really good job. So communication was a big thing, and then my dad was leadership and integrity. Everything was leadership and integrity. You're a leader. You got to be a leader. You have to act like a leader. And integrity was literally everything you did had integrity attached to it. Everything, every single thing you did, whether you were watering the garden, which specific incident was I told him I watered the garden and didn't water the garden, he was like, if you work for me, I'd fire you because you lack integrity.
Right. Right.
Okay. Well, you know, as a 7-year-old kid.
I'm about to say,
you're
how
like,
old were you?
7, yeah.
That's awesome.
And I was like, and I remember that to this day.
Still, yeah.
You know, it was his famous phrase, if you work for me, I'd fire you. Okay, cool, you know. But anyway, integrity, and it's ironic because what I do as for a living is
Oh, yeah.
integrity. Everything
Sure.
is integrity. And so that was instilled very young in me. And
Sure.
seems to be pretty good. I mean, the girls, our daughters, you know, we're working through that, and you tell them you'd fire them, they cry and run off. But I don't do that. But anyway, you know, it's the same type of thing. You know, you're learning how to instill those principles and stuff like that into them.
So Krystina, when you see Derek parents and Derek in marriage, what do you see some of the qualities from your perspective that he's kind of taken from his the reason I'm asking is last time we had Pastor Sue, we were talking about, you know, you bring into your marriage like how you grew up and those type things. So what are some things that you've seen that Derek exemplifies or does?
What I love is his stable family life from growing up. That was really helpful because I grew up with pastors, so things were done a certain way in home and in life. And then for Derek, things were done a certain way in his house. So we've kind of meshed the two for our girls. Like his rule, no TV during dinner. And, you know, growing up, our kitchen didn't have a TV. Of course, you know, it was the 90s.
Right.
So that wasn't a thing. But now I feel like so many families are like, how do I get connected to my kids? And how do I do this? Well, Derek's like, yeah, no TV during dinner. Because growing up, they didn't have TV during dinner either. There wasn't a TV in that room.
Right.
So I like how he brings that to the table. And then he'll, you know, his guidance with the girls on coaching them through different experiences in life.
Emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence
Yes.
is what
Oh,
he uses with our
that's a
8-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are things that are worth crying about, and there's things that are not worth crying about.
Right.
Especially with girls, you know,
Sure.
we tend to cry if there's no blood. So
Right.
you fell, but we're okay. We're going to rebound from this.
Right.
And you made a mistake, but that's okay. Or you didn't tell the truth. Well, then he starts talking to them about integrity and why it's important.
Right.
And, you know, we always tell them if you didn't tell the truth, you have to always tell the truth. Even if you think you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get more trouble if you don't tell us the truth.
Yeah, I'm a human lie detector. I'm a cop. Been a cop for a long
Right.
time. If you're lying to me, I'm going to know.
Right.
You know, that seems to work right now. At some point, it probably won't work. But,
Well, yeah.
you know, I'm
A little more challenging, but you'll be up to the task.
It's going pretty good so
It's
far.
going pretty good. Yeah, that's right.
I got more than a 50-50 shot. You telling me the truth here? Well, okay.
Right.
There you go.
Right.
And I would say, you know, for Derek and I, there are things where you just kind of have to own it in your own marriage relationship. For us, over the years, you know, there are times when we talk to each other and we say, you know what, we really need to pray about that. I mean, it's not just growing up, you hear it, but it's, you know, we come to that point in our lives where we have to own it and say, we're going to pray about that. We're going to come back and talk about it and make a decision together, whether it's about marriage, parenting, something going on at work.
Right.
That's always a challenge for me. I mean, in my job now, I mean, I make decisions every single day, all day long. That's what I do.
That's
I
right.
make decisions.
As soon as you walk in, they're probably
decisions
you have to
they're
make.
waiting on me.
Yes,
you know? And
right.
so to make sure I incorporate my wife at home. I mean, I don't have a problem making a decision. I can make a decision all day long, but to make the right decision for my family, it's important. It takes time and it takes thought and prayer, and we have to be on the same page. You know,
So was that hard for you to learn during early years of marriage, or was it something that came pretty easy to you?
You know what the hard thing for me to figure out is whenever it was a problem that I needed to fix and a problem I just needed to listen.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I was like, oh, well, let's just do this. Let's make decisions. She's like,
Yeah.
no, what are you talking about? Well, no, just listen to me. And I'm like, oh.
It's a real thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is. You know, you
a
hear
real
about
thing.
it, but, you know,
I know.
now it's like
You understand a little more?
they don't necessarily need you to fix everything. Just listen.
Right.
And a lot of
Right.
times, you know, for Krystina, she'll work out the problem talking to you about it. And at the end of it, you're like, well, sure sounds like we have already have a solution here. And she's like, yeah, you're right. As long as we're on the same page, we're good.
Right.
You know, so.
Right. Well, in your job, you get to see the best of the world, right? No, you get to, like you said earlier, you get the problems that no one really wants to deal with, or become so massive and big that the police have to get involved.
Yeah.
And I see this sometimes in youth ministry or in the ministry is people unable to deal with the reality of their kids or the reality of what's really going on. So what are some of the things that you see, some of the characteristics that you see that on these challenges that you face affect when it comes like to parenting and their kids and
For me now, I oversee all operations at our department. So I mean, I'm pretty involved in a day to day, so to speak, element. Probably for me, the most important thing that we deal with, since we are a suburb of Springfield, we're a smaller department in the sense that, we aren't running big city problems to a certain degree. We deal with a lot of family problems. So we deal with a lot of runaway kids, missing kids, problems within a family unit. So a lot of times whenever those come in, we keep close tabs on anything dealing with juveniles and youth because there's certain regulations in Missouri that you have to follow and certain things. So we do deal a lot with those. And one of the things that I've seen on a pretty regular basis is whenever a parent brings in a kid, whether the kid's been involved in some kind of incident that they've discovered, or maybe the kid's runaway. They ran away and parents are reporting them as a runaway. The overwhelming majority of parents don't have any idea who their kid is, what they do, nothing about them. You ask questions, you try to get information from them about, who they hang out with, what do they do. They literally look at you and like, I don't know, I have no idea. And that creates a challenge for law enforcement, obviously, because
Sure.
we're looking for leads and trying to figure out what's going on, or to figure out why the problem exists to begin with. But when you ask a set of parents, hey, so where's your daughter at right now? Where would she go if she wasn't with you? Well, her friend, she would go to her friend's house. Well, who's her friend? What's her name? Jessica, Jennifer.
Yeah.
It starts with a J. Oh,
okay.
okay. And so
Right.
you're like,
Right.
what do you know? Tell me what you
Right.
know. So yeah, they just don't know who their kids are, and
Right.
that's a problem. And I think that if they knew who their kids were on some level, they could probably work towards a plan to not have the problems that they're having. I mean, if they could forecast on some
Sure.
degree,
Sure.
what may be coming, or if they knew the friend that they were hanging out with and what they did, maybe they would steer their child away from that person. So,
Right. Right. What are some other common ingredients that you see with these teenagers that are running away or that are in these situations?
They have no accountability for their actions, and that basically, in a sense, is no discipline there.
Sure.
And so, one of the things I got some pretty good advice from a friend of mine he's a mentor, but he's a police officer, older guy. He talked about when he grew up, he had to pay for everything, do everything. His parents were trying to teach him responsibility, and well now, you try to do the same type of thing with your kids, right?
Right.
Go get a job. You'll pay for your car. You'll pay for your phone. And he told me, he goes, I'm a father now. He goes, and it's occurred to me that as the world changes and technology becomes a thing,
Yeah.
How do you discipline your kids when they're so connected? How do you do this? How do you do that? He goes, it's hard to take a phone away from a kid who says, oh, I paid for this phone.
Right.
Well, some parents may have problems doing that, but
Right.
on the same respect, if you provided all those things for your kids, you have control over them.
Right.
And there are technology is great in the sense of you monitoring. If you want to monitor your kid, here's a phone. Here's a brand new iPhone. I don't even
Right.
know what number are they on. 14, 15?
I think 15.
I don't know. I got like a 10 or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, here's a brand new phone. It's my phone, but I'm going to let you use it. But now you have control over that item. And legally speaking, it's your phone. You're just letting them use it, right? So, I think being able to control some of those things, vehicles, it's maybe a challenge to purchase your kid a vehicle, but that's also something you can take away whenever they
Sure.
are not using it
Right.
properly. So,
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and Christine, you probably see that working with young adults and
Mm-hmm.
what you do teaching this whole issue of accountability and and not
Yeah, and
they're like,
what's
oh my gosh, I really do need to study, or
Yeah, and Derek and I talk about this a lot. Recently, there's this victim mentality running through the new, younger, early 20s generation on, oh, woe is me.
Right.
This isn't working, so it's not my fault. It must be the professor's fault.
Right.
Or I understand that the assignment was due, but yet I just didn't get it done.
Right.
Can you just give me a better grade?
Right.
Give me extra credit?
Give me a pass.
Give me a pass. Yes,
Right.
and it's like, well, you've had all these opportunities, you've had all these warnings. At some point you have to say, I'm going to do this for myself.
Right.
And
Right.
have accountability for it. And that's, something else Derek instills in the girls is, what did your mom tell you to do when you come home? It was to go and finish your homework.
Oh,
Have
yeah.
you done it yet?
They totally play, hey, Dad, can we go play with Choco, our dog, right? Why are you asking me? Pretty sure you typically get this answer from your mom. Why are you asking me?
Yes.
What'd your mom
Yes.
say? Well, you're like, I'm not gonna fall for that.
Yeah,
You get
divide
me
and
in trouble.
conquer, right?
Right.
Yeah, trying to separate the two
Right.
for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, what are some, excuse me, what are some of the dangers that you see teenagers getting involved in that parents are completely oblivious about? Because I'm sure that you see Christian kids getting in trouble as well as.
Yeah, I don't
Worldly
think
kids.
you can. I mean, on some level, you can look at a family unit and go, "Oh, there's no God in that house."
Right.
You can tell.
Right.
There's no Jesus in anybody's heart there. But Christian kids and families aren't immune to, they're susceptible to the same things everybody else is. And kids are kids. And the problem that you see is if your kid's around non-believers or people who aren't Christians, that's an influence, and that influence can be way stronger than people who are Christians.
I wish parents would understand that.
Well, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we, in the lobby of our police department, you got people that I know because I've been in the community for so
Right.
long. They're
Right.
very involved in church, very active, good Christian people,
Right.
and you're looking at their kid going, I wonder what happened there.
How is this possible?
Yeah, but it's very possible, and really, I think this goes back to know your kid. Talk to your kid, figure out what's going on with your kid, and just have a general interest into what they do and why they're doing it, and not just let them go on autopilot.
For us, we have our daughter's friends over at our house. And as much as Derek doesn't always enjoy that when I say, hey, so-and-so's family's coming over, he's like, great.
That's awesome.
But I do
Yeah.
it in a way that it's at our house. He can talk to a dad. If the dad's there, I can spend time talking to the mom. I can watch their family dynamic. I can see what they're about, how they respond to their children, what they're teaching their children. And then I can
Yeah.
get a sense of watching our girls play with them and see what's the dynamic happening there, especially if it's someone that Emma, our oldest, talks about a lot of that's my really good friend. Or I'll plan like a play date outing just to get the family dynamic there.
Right.
On, okay, well, what kind of...
What's going on?
I'm not about
Influence.
to let my girls are the most important thing in my life,
Right.
outside of my relationship with God and my wife.
Right.
I'm not going to let them go over to somebody's house. I don't know anything about these people.
Right.
Sure, they may be good people. They may send their kid to a Christian school, which is where our girls go to school. But I've been in a lot of houses in 17 and a half years, and I've been in a lot of places where things looked one way on the outside and they weren't that way on the inside. And I'm not going to risk that with my kids. And I would encourage parents to be skeptical.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
my best friend, we spend time with him and his family, but at the same time, I'm not going to send my kids over there because people still they do different things when you're not around them. You know,
Right.
so
Right.
you just got to be careful. You got to be
Right.
extremely careful, and like I said, it goes back to knowing your kids as far as what's going on. Her dad told me whenever we found out we were having Emma, our first girl, which was a shock for me. I just, oh my goodness, I grew up with two brothers. I
What
didn't
am I
have any
gonna do?
sisters. How do I raise a girl? He goes, well, you're gonna have a girl. I'm like, yep. you need to know some things. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I need to know a lot of things. And he goes, whenever Krystina was young, she'd come in my office and sit down, and she'd just start talking, and I'd be doing something, working, and he goes, I would have to force myself to stop what I was doing and look up and listen to her, because she was telling me things that were important, things that, I'd never heard these things before, she's talking to me, she's opening up. So,
Right.
When your kids do that, if they're not trained to do that from a young age, you need to take the time to stop and listen, because they're probably
Right.
telling you things that are valuable information for you to know and learn.
Right.
And, now that I have two, he just laughed. He goes, remember that thing I told you about listening? I'm like, yeah. He goes, give me listening.
A lot of listening.
Great. Yeah, but, I just having conversations with your kids, it's been very fun with our girls. Emma's 8 and Riley's 4. Riley's starting to develop her vocabulary, so she'll have, like, conversations with you, and you're like, wow, it's a pretty cool thought you had as far as, like, communicating
Right.
and saying things. So, but I think if you don't provide that to them at a young age, maybe you cheat yourself out of having good communication later in life, or maybe they're like, they're not listening to me. Why would I go talk to them?
That's a great point of training them early.
Yeah.
Because when they become teenagers, they tend to try to sometimes block out the parents. But if you've had that before, you can just parents got to bear down.
Yeah.
Another point I would say is listen to your kids. If they don't want to hang out with somebody, they don't want to interact with
Don't force
somebody,
them.
date somebody, don't, because they know something, or they sense something, or
Yes.
they've watched that kid or the kid's family,
Right.
and there's a reason there. I mean, there are kids at school, Emma will get invited to a birthday party, and I'll ask her, and she'll say, no. I don't force it. Even if
Right.
I think, I kind of like the mom, they seem like good people, it'd be a fun time.
Right.
I just think there's a reason.
Right.
And I'm not going to force
Yeah.
it. So don't force your kids, especially in dating.
Oh,
Don't tell your
yes,
kids
please, dear
who to
Lord.
date, who not to date. I mean,
Right.
well, yeah, who not to date, especially if you have a red flag. But I mean, don't be so in there that they can't make those decisions for themselves, but then you're not also listening to them because they know something, or they have a check in their own spirit.
Or things will slip out. I mean, sometimes teenagers crack me up. They're like, Aaron, how'd you find out about this? And I'm thinking in my head, well, you guys are blabbing it like in the hallway, or y'all are like talking about it like right in front of me. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
But they don't understand that but that communication's very key.
There were times when Pastor would be like, oh, she's going to go on a date with that guy? Okay. And then he'd be like later going, yeah, I knew that would work out. But I didn't say anything,
Right.
But it's like sometimes
Which
you
had
have
to be pretty hard for him.
Yeah,
I mean,
you have to let
that's-
them
Yeah,
figure it out on their own. And then, of course, there are other times going, oh, no, you're not going to go on a date with that
sure.
person. Like,
It's a non-starter.
it's a non-starter.
Right.
So you kind of have to, parents, it's hard. You have to tread lightly on both sides.
Right.
It takes a lot of prayer.
Right.
Yeah.
So, friends, it's an awesome thing you have to communicate with your teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Friends, and then phones.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say phones?
I'd
Like,
Yeah.
Social media, these dating
Oh.
apps, these
Yeah.
apps that they know where you are. And like we always tell parents of older kids, teenagers, that you don't know that is a 17-year-old talking to your 17-year-old
no
on the
idea.
other end.
Yeah.
And I tell my students that in college.
And that's crazy, because I mean, anymore, like Pinterest, for example. I mean, it seems like a pretty innocent platform, right? You
right, crafts and whatever.
crafts, you're building a house. It's
Right.
invaluable. At least there was for Krystina.
Right.
But we've had child pornography cases that began on Pinterest, and not the pictures or videos, but the correspondence and communication.
The relationship.
Yeah, the chat function on that, which
Uh-huh.
apparently is a chat function. I know very little about social
Right.
media. I have zero social media, but the problem is any element where you can chat with somebody, they're using video games. There's chat functions in video games. that
Right.
I don't understand how it works necessarily, but
Right.
it's anytime it's a line to the outside world that people can infiltrate and utilize to communicate with your kids that you don't know about. This
Right.
goes back to knowing your kids. I mean, if your kid's playing video games and he's talking in a headset or whatever, I would be, who are you talking to? 'Cause
Right.
he could be talking to somebody in another country.
Right.
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 So, just knowing what's going on. Technology is scary,
Yeah.
and that's something that, like I said, I'm not a tech guy, but I see all kinds of different things occur with phones, pictures, videos, Snapchat, where videos disappear after a certain time, or they lock down. One of the things that I think is important to remind kids is in the digital world, nothing goes away. It exists. So when you do something, when you put something out there, you're not probably going to be able to recover from that very quickly. If you have any aspirations in life of doing anything that's worth doing, that kind of stuff follows you around.
Right.
We have the discussion in our house pretty frequently about consequences. There's consequences to everything. Good consequences, bad consequences. Every decision, everything you say, do, has a consequence. Bad consequences are a problem, right? So you have to think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. But kids these days, there's no forethought. I want to be a doctor. I want to go and be a veterinarian or whatever. But then it comes time to get into a school to go do that, and they're like, your social media is a little unacceptable for
Right.
our
Which does happen.
Yeah.
They lie to them and say, "Oh, don't worry about it. That's
Well, I mean, and you talk about, for example, being a police officer. I oversee the hiring component for us. We utilize different platforms to deep dive into social media, because if you're a police officer and you do something, maybe you're involved in an officer-involved shooting or something, you better believe that the people, whoever that is, they're going to do a deep dive into your social media, and there better not be anything inappropriate in that. So we try to get ahead of that, right? And there's stuff we find from, these people are 23, 24 years old, and there's stuff we find they posted when they're 16, 17, and you're like, hey, that's not okay. And they're like, oh, well, that was years ago. I'm like, yeah, but you still posted it, and it's still available.
Right.
So you still have to be held accountable for it. And so that it's cost people careers, cost people jobs. Maybe they go find a job somewhere else that doesn't care. But, ultimately, you're talking about a decision they made 6 years prior to that, and, now they're being held accountable, or that they've been, removed from a process that they were dead set on accomplishing. They can't accomplish it because of a decision they made as a kid.
Right. Right. I think it's important when you're communicating with your kids is to not just tell them what the rules are, but why they are the rules.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you're talking about of, we don't do these things, not because they're just wrong, they are, but because they don't go away. So that's going to be a stamp that you're going to have to work really hard to get over, and you don't need to climb that hill. You don't need to go that direction at all.
That's funny you say that, because, I'll relate this back to police officers. This newer generation of police officers, they ask why.
Yes.
And in an organization that's a paramilitary organization, when you give a directive or an order, you don't expect somebody to ask why. You just do it, right? But I'm at an advantage because I have a 4-year-old.
Yes.
And
so you're used to it.
Yes.
It's a constant question.
My 8-year-old doesn't care about why. She wants to tell you everything about what you've told her, because she's a sponge and she learns crazily. My 4-year-old wants, why? Like, hey, go put your PJs on. Why? It's bedtime. Why is it bedtime? It's dark outside. But it gets dark earlier now. It does get dark earlier now, but basically it's because I told you to go put your PJs on.
Go put your PJs on.
And so you're back around to the original statement.
Right.
But
that's communication, right? I mean, that's part of...
Yeah, but I mean, if you tell, like now, you tell a 13 or 14-year-old girl, hey, you're not going over to that house.
Yes.
Why? Because I said not. That's not going to work.
It's not.
That's going to make them want to go there even more because they think they're missing out on something.
And you're trying to keep them from it.
Yeah, and so explain it to them. It'd be a hard conversation to have, and maybe a very hard conversation, but have that conversation. Hard conversations they're hard, and they suck.
Yes.
But they're important.
Right.
And even though it may make them cry or may upset them or make them whatever, you have to have those conversations. And I think it's just like... it's just like anything. You don't end on a bad note. You end in a positive way. Like, you're just not going to go. But, let's go to a movie tonight. Let's go do something fun.
Right.
Whatever the case may be. But, tell them why. Tell them why. You know what? That kid, every time you come home from that kid's house.
Right.
Or every time you're around that kid at any event, you have a poor attitude, and you say things that are hurtful to your sister, or
Right.
you act away, you don't listen to what I tell you to do when I'm asking you to do something, or whatever the case may be. Have that conversation with them. They need to
Right.
know.
Right. Right.
Just that's important, I think.
Well, I've learned over the years with their faith, with teenagers in faith, if I do anything different, better, if I do better now than I did at the beginning, it's excuse me, it's this whole concept of explaining why the Bible says this. Because I've realized that if they don't have a deep foundation, they're going to be suckered by whoever saying some nice lie to them, right? And so you're talking about like getting your kids to be smart, to observe what's going on around them. And we're not judging people, but we're being smart about there's actions have consequences, and they're doing this action and they're going to have those consequences, and you don't want those consequences, so therefore you don't go hang out with them and do those actions type stuff. For sure.
That's exactly right.
So friends, phones, what else do you see that parents don't really talk to their kids enough about?
Well, sex.
Yeah.
That's a very uncomfortable conversation that I don't want to have with my girls. But a great example would be this last week. We had a runaway. She was 14. She was pregnant. She was 5 weeks pregnant.
Oh man.
5 weeks. I think it was something to that effect. And her mom seemed like a nice lady.
Right.
Seemed like she was a single mom. She was pretty overwhelmed with what was going on, and the conversation had to happen. And we're like, so she's pregnant. I'm like, huh. So how long has she been sexually active? I have no idea. I'm like, okay, well, how long has she had free time during the day that the last few years I've had to get another job. And so really there's about 4 hours in the middle of the day when she gets home from school that I'm not present for. I'm like, okay, well,
that's it.
She's filled her time.
Right.
And
Right.
here we are. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, that conversation has to happen. And I will have the conversation with my girls. It'll be a different one than my wife has with them because
Sure.
of my experience and
Sure.
what I do and what I've seen. But you got to start talking about that at the right time, but it needs to be on the early side of that.
Unfortunately, I think our society has forced that conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe not the full conversation, but you got to start planting some seeds pretty quick.
Yeah.
About this stuff, 'cause it's everywhere.
How you conduct yourself.
Yes.
And how you dress, how you act, and then even this starting this whole boyfriend girlfriend thing super early.
Yes.
It's always disconcerting when you hear at the kindergarten level of, is that your boyfriend? Are you guys together?
We don't have those conversations in our house.
No, it's like
I hear a boy's name at my dining room table. I'm like, who's that? Oh, that's Charlie. Oh, yeah? Tell me about Charlie. Well, Charlie took my toy. Well, you tell Charlie if he takes your toy again, you're going to punch him. She's like, really? I'm like, no. You tell Charlie, minus P's and Q's.
I think that's Derek teaching boundaries.
Yes.
But, to start the
well, and
conversation.
for her to stand up for herself.
Yeah, stand up for herself,
Yes.
not be treated that way, or, it just, one thing pastors always said was there's safety in numbers. So they had me start out dating with double dates.
Sure.
And they, with Austin, and other people, friends, but there's safety in numbers. Learn how to date. Learn with your teenagers. Talk to them about what is appropriate, what's not appropriate. It may make you uncomfortable to talk about what's appropriate touching and what's not, but you have to have those
Be
even
specific.
earlier. Be
Yes.
specific, especially if you let your even preteens go over to other people's homes. You don't know what's in somebody's heart. You don't know who they're talking to or who's coming over to their house or older siblings even. You have to have those awkward conversations for yourself. They could save your child. But then also, you think your teenager's old enough to be home for 4 hours during the day alone. Are they really?
No.
I mean, are they developed enough? They're making adult decisions
Yes.
as a preteen, young teen. So you have to know, who are they with? What are they doing? And maybe they still need constant supervision.
Right.
Because their brain is not developed enough.
Yeah, I would say, like back to technology again, it's here. Might as well use it to your advantage. We don't have the Live 360 app on our phones, but if I had girls that drove.
Yeah, you're not there yet, yeah.
they're doing their thing. You better believe I'd
Absolutely.
have that. So
Always.
use it to your advantage. If you have a time frame within your house where there's no adults home, put cameras up in your house. It'd be pretty nice to be able to log into your camera. Not saying that can't be defeated on some level, with some ingenuity, but it can really maybe keep people from coming and going. If you have a camera on your front door, knowing when people are coming and going, or any door for that matter, that'd be pretty nice. That maybe would create an environment that would discourage some of that behavior that creates problems like a pregnant 15-year-old. So,
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, I'd use the technology to your advantage if you can, but then.
And then I think it's also with older teens, talk to them about why a dating relationship is not a marriage relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You don't act like you're married when you're dating. So if you have an
Yes.
older teen or a young 20s still living with you, you treat them like a young adult, but you hold them accountable.
Yes.
Respect yourself.
Right.
And you're not married yet, so you're not going to act like you're in a marriage relationship when you're
Right.
not.
Right.
And those conversations may be awkward for parents, but they have to start happening when kids start developing
Right.
and getting to that point. And
Right.
if you think your kids don't know about a topic, you're living life with blinders on, because they
Yes.
already know from older siblings, from cousins, from friends, from
Yes.
the internet, being exposed to the internet, other people's homes.
And you
they
can
already
try
know
as hard as you can do a fantastic job
of sheltering.
of sheltering, but there's going to be that exposure at
Yeah.
some point. It's coming.
It's coming. So it's better
And
that
it's
they
usually
talk to you.
the least time you expect it.
Yes.
Right.
It's usually after something's already happened.
Right. Right.
Like finding out, that her young daughter was expecting.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. We deal with this a couple times a year as a police department, where like grown adults get scammed. It's usually 40, 50, 60-year-old people who are lonely, right? So maybe
Right.
they're widows or whatever. They get scammed by some guy or girl in another country needing money,
Right.
and you're talking to them, and you're like, "Oh, okay, show me a picture of this guy," and they show you a picture, and you're like, "Yeah,
I don't think so.
that's a model." I mean, you could
Yeah.
do a Google reverse image search and find this. This particular one was a model.
Yeah.
You're like, no,
Oh, man.
and so I guess my point would be, if an adult, a seasoned adult who's been through pretty much most of their life, is been tricked into doing whatever, sending tens of thousands of dollars in this case over to this guy
Right.
in Nigeria.
Right.
In this particular case, it's all over the country. But my point would be, if these kids who have no life experience are online and interacting with people who are, smooth talkers or whatever, they are just as susceptible, and
Sure.
it's scary and it's dangerous. And so you got to be on top of that. You have to know what's going on there. But you have to go back to, knowing what they're doing when they're doing it. Lock down the technology, be able to monitor what's being sent out. Social media is really, because this was all through, I think, Facebook. So, social media, there's a lot that goes on in social media that's, it terrifies me as a parent, just because I know on
See the
different
effects
levels.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but really everybody does. I mean,
Yeah.
you can watch the news for a week and see where some kid ran away to go meet some guy who's actually some 30-year-old dude, and you're like, what is going on? How did that not get picked up by a parent?
Mm-hmm.
And, when you boil down, the parents weren't paying attention. They were doing their own thing. They were Christmas shopping. They were, I don't know, all kinds of stuff.
Working.
Deer hunting, working, whatever. Anything, you have spare time, spend your spare time with your kids, know what's going on with them.
Right.
And I'd say a helpful tip is have a charging station in your house, a designated. This is where every phone
Yeah.
and iPad
It'll
goes.
be on my nightstand right
Yes.
next to me.
Sure.
So-
Absolutely.
And for parents to go through the chats, and there's way to hide apps, learn that, figure that out, spend the time researching that, and ask somebody that may be more knowledgeable than you to help you, and know. And then from a young age, talk to your kids about what kind of pictures do you take? What kind of pictures are appropriate?
Right.
We don't text pictures to our friends. If somebody asks you for a picture that's not appropriate, have enough integrity and self-awareness to say, no.
Right.
And remember, you're not in a marriage relationship.
Right.
Even if they start with the whole I love yous, talk to your girls about that, and boys too. It's
Right.
important for both, but that you live your life with integrity.
Right.
That you're never ashamed of the decisions you've made and how you've lived your life, and and I would say for parents, model that for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing with your free time? What are you doing with your time off? Live a life of integrity in your marriage relationship.
I think it's also important that parents they need to realize, and my mom and dad did a great job of this. This is one of the things that my dad constantly reminded me of this. He goes, "I'm not your friend. I'm your dad," and that may make it easier to have those conversations.
Right. Right.
But you can be a cool parent. You can be funny and friendly and all those things. But you're not their friend, you're their
Right.
parent. So when it comes down
Right.
to it, you set the boundaries, you set the rules, and they follow them or they don't, and there's consequences for not following them. So I see that quite a bit. And I see it a lot whenever you have parents who are separated or divorced. One
Yeah.
parent's like, well, I want to be the cool parent because
Yeah.
of what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing a disservice to your kid because they're trying to figure out who's going to give them stability, and stability comes with rules and standards and regulations that are put in place. And,
Right.
but yeah, being a friend, I can literally remember. I can listen to my dad the exact tone, son. I am not your friend. I'm your father. And you're just like, okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it made sense, And now, I'm 39, and my dad and I, we're pretty close. We get along great. It didn't affect anything, I know my dad's the guy that I can go to who's going to give me good wisdom and advice on situations that are important, because we were experiencing life together, but he was the person that made himself available to me to give me answers that I needed in times that were tough.
Right.
I don't know how to handle this, Dad. What do I do? Well, son, and he may have faked it till you make it. I don't know, but he did a good job of it,
Right.
and he did a great job of guiding me and providing me with that wisdom and those decisions, and my mom too. My mom very clearly, she the wooden spoon chasing me around the house, but she, there was never any thought in me or my brother's minds that my parents were not parents. They were our friends and we were on the same level. That was not the case.
Right.
And then kids need to be told that.
They need that authority in their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, but then you knew growing up that equaled how much they loved you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There was never any doubt, because it's not just, the hammer of justice, all the time. It's,
Right.
When you needed it, they would tell you, hey, listen, you're not going to do that. Or, hey, you need to do this. Or, there's a few times my dad let me make decisions that he knew were the wrong decision. It wasn't the wrong decision. It was just not the best decision. And, a couple years later, he would come back to it. He has an incredible memory. He'd come back and be like, hey, let's talk about that. Specifically baseball for me. I quit baseball and I shouldn't have quit baseball. And he'd be like, you regret quitting baseball? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
It probably would have changed the trajectory of my life, but the bottom line is the reason I quit was very selfish and very childish.
Right.
And he's like, you needed to make that one yourself, but I knew it was the wrong one.
Right.
But yeah, provide guidance and help through things, and
Right.
making sure I learn from those mistakes, because that's something that he was really good at too.
Right.
I don't want to talk about that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but forcing those conversations, right?
Yeah.
Having those conversations, I think, is key. But like you said, not just pounding you over the mistakes you made.
Yep.
Because I heard him brag about you very well when you guys got married. That was one of the most, when he's talking about you growing up, it's pretty funny about
Yeah.
how he had to stop you from mowing the lawn just to be that was you.
Yeah, well,
It wasn't a punishment to you. It was something you enjoyed.
it was something I enjoyed because it was something that was mine, and I remember that I still like mowing the yard. I have way too much to mow now, but it was one of those things. He gave me something that was mine that I could do. That was in my house growing up, we didn't have what do they call that? They didn't pay me for things.
Allowance.
Allowance, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what it's called because I didn't get it. It was cost of doing business. You
That's
live
right.
here, go do this.
That's
you
right.
know? So, as far as like mowing the yard, I took pride in that because it was something that was mine, and I like to do things like that. I enjoy the finished product of something, but he noticed that at a young age for me and really cultivated that kind of thing. So I would say, once again, know your kid, but see what they like to do and what they're good at, and help them grow.
Right.
I see that a lot in what I do as a deputy chief with people. You're always investing time and energy into people to develop them and grow them into what they want to be.
Right.
Do that with your kid. Your kid's way cooler
Yes.
than your coworker.
Yes.
Or
Way more valuable.
The people that work for you. I mean,
Right.
it's a part of you, and so that's something else to think about. If they're a part of you, you know what you like.
Right.
Maybe they have no idea that they're good at golf. If you like golf, or hunting and fishing. I recently took my girls, my oldest one, Riley. She likes to go hunting, but she likes to talk a lot and loud.
Which is kind of a counterproductive, right?
But Emma, my 8-year-old, she went and sat in my blind with me on opening weekend for deer season 2 weekends ago, and I saw a ton of deer that morning. So I'm like, oh, that's going to be a great opportunity. And she went, and we saw one deer. It was the rattiest looking little buck. He had one horn coming off one side. She looked at him and goes, "Dad, he's cute, but just put him out of his misery." And I'm like, "No, we're gonna let this one pass." But she still talks about that time. And
Yeah.
She's like, "I want to go deer hunting with you next year." I'm
Right.
like, cool. I went and bought her a deer rifle.
Right.
Friday before we left.
Right.
So, yeah. No, it's like a freebie. You know what you like. Your kid's 50% you.
Right. Right.
Develop them.
Jackpot,
see what
man.
they like.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. That's great advice.
Yep.
Great advice. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. You did a great job. And if you have any questions or comments that you want answered, put it down there in our comment section or send us an email. We will get to it in a future podcast. And thanks for joining us.